Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux here with the DRF. We're going to look at a stakes preview for this Saturday at Gulfstream Park. They have a ton of graded stakes races. It's an excellent card top to bottom. We're going to take a look at their fifth race, which is the 1.5 mile Grade 2 Pan American on the grass. $200,000 is the person. Looking at the field in here, it ends up being a field of 8 runners. No surprise to see Masterpiece is the 7-5 morning line favorite. Jose Ortiz, will be in the irons. Bay Street Money 9-2. A Bond, who's had some success routing and going these extreme marathon distance in the past, he's 5-1. A couple other horses at bigger prices on the board, such as Rise the Guy, who's just making a second start off a very long layoff, and the 6th California Frolic for Armando de la Cerda, Edgar Perez in the iron. So it's an interesting field. We'll look at the number 1, Wicked Fast, to kick things off. This horse was most recently 5th in the McDermott, a Grade 2 competition, but going 1 mile 3/8. Now, in terms of 1.5 miles, he does have a third at the distance. That was 2 starts back on that Pegasus day in the Grade 3 McKnight. He finished third, beaten by 2 lengths behind Red Knight and Value Engineering, who came back to win the McDermott. So he doesn't have to face that runner against this group. The main thing is he always comes late. He flies late in these races. He typically has a lot of work cut out for him. He's 4-1 on the morning line. He's 3 for 5 in the money at Gulfstream Park, but just knowing how he typically doesn't have, enough to get the job done and is just flying late, but usually isn't even in the money. It's a little bit of a concern when you start to look at some of his races. It's a trend for him. He only won 1 race last year out of 10, but I will say his effort 2 back would be the one that I would key in on and say that it was a really good effort. The number 2, Nova Soul, the Brazilian horse, this one trained by Safi Joseph Jr., has kind of stayed on synthetic surfaces in those last several starts. You can see he's traveled between Gulfstream, Presque Isle, as well as Woodbine. We're actually going to take a look at that race on November 6th at Woodbine, the Grade 2 Autumn. He's the number 2 in here. You can see the yellow and white silks. And once this horse angles out and gets into the clear, he is running on very well. And I think if you actually watch the whole replay, he was a little further back than I would have expected. But to see him, I thought he ran well all in all. You see who ends up winning this race, who's the star, who is a horse that he's not going to face. Actually had to face in those last 2 outings. So I was impressed with this effort. He got a 91 buyer speed figure. Show that race. It is at 1.16 miles. I am curious how he'll do stretching back out on distance. Now, when you go down the page and you look at his only turf race at Gulfstream Park, what race was it? Well, it was last year's Grade 2 Pan American, where he finished third behind Gufo in a Bond. So we'll have to tackle a Bond once again. But in terms of trips, that kind of field wasn't too strung out. And I thought he ran considerably well, especially considering it was his first time going 1.5 miles on the grass since coming from Brazil. He had experience at the distance in the past and actually ran very well there in a Group 1 race back in May of 2021. He's an outsider in here at 10-1 on the morning line. Number 3, Masterpiece. I said no surprise to see him as a favorite. This horse is a 6-time winner from 22 starts in his career. He's going to wear blinkers in this start. It's you can go down the page. You don't see blinkers on in terms of equipment. Going to try them on the 7-year-old son of Master Craftsman, who finished third last out in the McDermott. And I wanted to show this replay. Mentioned Wicked Fast ended up racing that race is the number 12, but Masterpiece is the 2. You can't miss him. He's the gray in the silks of Ivorone. And looking at this horse's trip, I thought he angled out nicely, did get in the clear. It was closing. He just didn't have enough of a punch. He only misses by a length and a half. Needed a tad bit more, but I thought it was a really good effort. Just his second start in 2023. You go down the page, he is a Grade 2 winner. He's had some really good efforts kind of everywhere that he's gone. So he's been an interesting addition to the Safi Joseph Jr. barn. And I think just looking at his races and his numbers, he is the one to beat on Saturday. The number 4, Rise the Guy, made his first start since October of 2021 at Gulfstream Park just about a month ago. It was just an allowance optional claiming event. He was not entered for the tag. He never really ran from there. You can see he broke towards the back of the field, and that's kind of where he stayed. Now, it was his first effort since the 2021 Grade 3 Sycamore, where he's third behind Spooky Channel, who just won last weekend at Fairgrounds. Ran very nicely. He's faced really tough horses in the past. Now, reservations, second start off a long layoff. He's going to go long, stretch out in distance, and his last win was back in September of 2020, and it was actually on the dirt going 1.5 miles. He was much the best in that race, but it's been a while. I think he's going to need a couple of races to maybe get back into form. So for me, wait and see approach on the number 4, Rise the Guy. Number 5, Therapist. This one trained by Mike Maker, was 4-length winner, actually over 4 lengths, 4.5-length winner last time out against starter competition on the Tapeta. Is going to get back on the turf. And you go down the page, This horse is primarily raced at a mile and a mile and a 16th on the turf. So he's going to get a little bit of a test in terms of distance. He's been able to close from off of it. I'm not sure what to necessarily make out of him because it's been a while since he's been against stakes competition. And you go down New York Breds, there's some of those races that he faced against. So it's an interesting spot to see him. Also, it's interesting to see Arad Ortiz Jr. booked to ride this horse. Some very nice workouts in preparation for this race, not only evenly spaced, but a bullet drill on March 28th, 48 flat on the main track of really, really sharp work. And the barn does well, kind of flip-flopping horses from synthetic to turf. He's a little bit of a sneaky horse. He's an 8-year-old who's an 11-time winner and has yet to miss the board on the Gulfstream Park turf course. Another outsider in this race is the number 6 California Frolic, who finished 8th most recently in the Grade 3 Canadian Turf. You go down the page, in terms of his 3-year-old season, he was very strong. He raced very well in the Tapeta and the turf at Gulfstream Park. He won the English Channel and the Not Surprising. He was second in the Bears Den, and his connections decided to send him to Colonial Downs for the Grade 3 Virginia Derby. And he was second at odds of 38-1. Now, this year so far as a 4-year-old, things haven't gone probably according to plan. Best finish was his first race off that bit of a layoff where he kind of finished mid-pack in a $100,000 overnight handicap. Now, Wolfie's Dynagosa winner has come back to win and has raced very well. And actually, from that race, would win at Turfway. But big thing is the horses that he's facing they're a lot more seasoned, and this will be a class test and a distance test in terms of his races. But he should close from off of it, so it's interesting to see his connections put him in this spot. The number 7, Abon, a son of Will Take Charge, who had a really great, kind of year in 2021 and was okay in 2022. When you go back to 2021, he had a lot of success here late in the year. He was able to win the HL in Jerkins at 2 miles, and then he came back and he won the McKnight at a mile and a half. He had a lot of success. And I wanted to show actually last year's Grade 2 Pan American for this horse, because the big thing about Abon is he's going to be forwardly placed. And I think on Saturday, this could play to his advantage. You can see here he's the number 5. Number 1 is Nova Soul, who I mentioned is the number 2 come this Saturday. And Abon's just getting a little bit tired. He is drifting out a little bit. You can see Gufo on the outside has the best late punch here and is able to get past Abon, but this horse had been forwardly placed, had the lead. He was a bit tired. I do like that on Saturday. He seems to be a really big pace threat in here and should, potentially get the front if he wants it. Now, the concern would be his last several efforts. He is tired in all of those races, anywhere from a mile and a 16th all the way to 2 miles. The other thing to note, he's been favored in his last 3 efforts, and he hasn't been able to, even finish in the money. And Luis Saez goes to the horse to his outside. So I'm not sure what to make out of all of that when it's all said and done. Joel Rosario, we all know, very capable jockey. But the big thing that he does have that early foot. Then rounding out the number 8, Bay Street Money. This is the other horse out of the Mike Maker barn. Was 4th last time out in that Grade 3 event, going a mile and an 1/8 at Fairgrounds. Prior to that, had a pretty nice 3rd here behind English B, who ran very well after having, changes made in his life. He was gelded. I know his connection spoke really highly of him. So I thought Bay Street Money ran very well against him, closed from off of it. Big thing about Bay Street Money, I think this horse could be a little sneaky and maybe tactical, could sit a bit closer than a couple other runners in here where they're going to be closing from way off of it and away from the clouds. I think Bay Street Money, he's a little sneaky. And I mentioned Luis Saez is going to ride here for Mike Maker. So I think that's a huge angle to note. So that's the field of 8. Now, I think after going through this field, it's probably not shocking. I think the number 3 Masterpiece is the horse to beat on Saturday. Looking at his resume, his Beyer speed figures, he's constantly in those kind of mid to upper 90s, going to get blinkers on. I just think he's going to be very, very tough on Saturday. Also, like, though, the other Safi Joseph Jr. horse in here, the number 2 Nova Soul, I do think he's really sneaky. He's been on the sidelines since December. Just going to make that first start of 2023 and was 3rd in this race last year. And then from there, I thought it was wide open. I mentioned the 7 Abon has some of that pace presence that could certainly help his chances. And then the 8 Bay Street Money, a bit of a sleepy horse in here, a little bit of a sneaker, only making that 2nd start in stakes competition in his career. But Masterpiece, I think, is a hard favorite to beat in Saturday's Pan American. Good luck.